Emily had always believed that love could hold a family together, a glue that would never break. At 41, she knew now how wrong she had been. Life had a way of exposing cracks, ones you didn't see until everything teetered on the edge. When she married David, she stepped not only into the role of a wife, but also into the delicate world of steve-motherhood. His son Liam was 17, then quiet, distant, polite in a way that made Emily feel like a visitor in her own home. She tried endlessly to bridge the gap, to become someone Liam could trust, yet every smile and gentle word seemed to bounce off a wall he had built long before she arrived. David was kind, dependable, and undoubtedly a good man, but he carried a silence that was nearly impenetrable. After the loss of his first wife, the warmth in him seemed to vanish, replaced by routine and mechanical affection. Emily told herself that stability was enough, that passion was a luxury she didn't need. Yet over the years, the quiet ache of yearning had grown, whispering for something more alive, something unmistakably human. She noticed it most with Liam. At 21, he had transformed into a young man with his father's eyes, yet none of his detachment. Thoughtful, attentive, aware in ways David no longer was, he began to fill the spaces Emily hadn't realized were so empty. It started innocently enough, with conversations over dinner. One evening, David was away on a business trip, and Liam and Emily shared a simple meal. The kitchen smelled faintly of reheated pasta, the soft clink of dishes filling the silence. Emily admitted how weary she'd been feeling lately. Liam's reply was gentle, almost startling in its sincerity. "You don't deserve to feel alone all the time." Those words cut deeper than she expected, a truth she had buried for years. Someone had finally seen her, not just the surface, but the quiet loneliness she tried to hide. Over the next weeks, their talks deepened. Life, loss, the strange chill that sometimes creeps into long-term relationships, they touched everything with honesty. Emily convinced herself it was merely comfort, that Liam was simply being caring, but she couldn't deny the warmth she craved when he was near. It wasn't physical at first, not exactly. It was emotional, a connection that David had long stopped offering. Sitting across from him, listening to his quiet insights, she felt alive in ways she hadn't in years. Then one night, the line blurred. Emily was on the couch, half asleep in her robe, the living room dim with the soft glow of a single lamp. Liam arrived late, pausing in the doorway before sitting beside her. His face was unreadable, heavy with something she couldn't name. "Emily," he whispered, voice trembling, "I can't take it anymore." Startled, she turned to him. "What do you mean?" she asked. He swallowed, looking away briefly, then back with unflinching honesty. "Watching you like this. Pretending everything's okay. Dad doesn't see you, but I do. I see how lonely you are." Her heart raced, caught between fear and a strange relief. Every word he spoke reflected her own hidden truth. For a fleeting moment, the world seemed suspended, fragile as glass. She wanted to pull back, to set the boundaries that had always been clear, yet tears brimmed in her eyes. Someone finally acknowledged the depth of her solitude, and it terrified her. The brush of his hand on her cheek, gentle and unintentional, made her pulse quicken. In that second, she realized how dangerously close they were to crossing a line that could never be undone. Emily forced herself upright, shaking her head, whispering, "Liam, don't, please." He froze, guilt flashing across his features. "I'm sorry," he murmured. "I didn't mean to. I just hate seeing you hurt." She guided him toward his room, the door closing behind him with a soft thud. Alone at last, she allowed herself to weep, not for what almost happened, but for the stark recognition of how empty her life had grown, how long she'd existed unseen, craving warmth in the wrong places. That night, the house felt different. Shadows seemed to linger longer, and Emily sat at the edge of her bed, haunted by the weight of unspoken truths. She had survived the moment, kept the boundaries intact, but the memory of Liam's words and the closeness they almost shared would echo in her heart for a long time. Somewhere between longing and restraint, she discovered how fragile the human heart could be, how easily loneliness could twist even the best of intentions. The next morning, Emily awoke with a heaviness she couldn't shake. The house was quiet, too quiet, as though Liam's presence or the lack of it had shifted the very air. David returned later that afternoon, carrying his usual calm demeanor and work-related chatter. On the surface, everything seemed normal. He didn't notice the tension, the subtle tremor in Emily's hands as she poured tea, or the hollow weight in the rooms Liam used to occupy. She forced a smile, masking the storm inside her. Weeks passed, and Liam's avoidance grew more pronounced. He stayed in his room, his meals silent affairs. Every attempt Emily made to connect met polite deflection or averted gaze. The absence of the warm, attentive young man she had begun to rely on left a vacuum in the house, a hollow echo of the near moment that had shaken her so deeply. At night, she would linger by the doorway of his room, her fingers brushing the edge of the frame, remembering his whispered words, the tremor in his voice the way he had truly seen her. Those memories were intoxicating and painful. A reminder of the line they hadn't crossed and the intimacy they almost shared. Emily told herself it was over, that she had done the right thing, yet her heart ached in ways she hadn't expected. Even David, steadfast and reliable, could not fill the void Liam's distance had created. She felt the quiet hum of longing pressing against her ribs, a reminder of the warmth and recognition that had been so fleeting. Each day, she walked through the house, passing by Liam's old desk, the faint traces of his presence whispering in the air. The ghost of that night lingered in corners, on couches, and the faint echo of his laughter. And in her own racing thoughts, months later, David spoke of Liam during a rare dinner. Concern tinted his voice, along with the faintest edge of frustration. "He barely replies to his messages," he said, stirring his food absent-mindedly. "I don't know what's happening. Did I do something wrong?" Emily's throat tightened. The truth, the fragile, complicated truth of that night would have crushed him, and yet she longed to confess. She wanted to release the weight she carried, to admit how close they had come to shattering everything. But she didn't. She swallowed the words. Letting silence protect them all from ruin. Liam eventually moved out, starting a new chapter in another city. Calls to David were polite, occasional, but he never reached out to Emily. The distance stung, yet she accepted it as penance, a quiet, deserved separation for both their sakes. The emptiness of the house deepened. Rooms that had once felt lived in now echoed with absence. Every step she took reminded her of the boundaries that had almost been breached, of the delicate balance between longing and restraint. She realized that loneliness could twist perception, making the familiar seem achingly distant and the wrong seem almost right. One winter morning, Emily received a letter with no return address. Her hands trembled as she recognized Liam's familiar handwriting. Inside, he wrote with quiet honesty, acknowledging the loneliness they both endured and the line he had nearly crossed. He admitted responsibility, absolved her of guilt, and thanked her for stopping him before irreparable harm was done. Emily read the letter repeatedly, each word blurring as tears filled her eyes. In that moment, she understood the depth of his struggle, the fragility of hearts starved for connection, and the silent pain that had lingered in the spaces between them. Though David never learned of the near crossing, the memory clung to Emily. Nights became long with reflection, haunted by the strange, twisting lessons life had taught her. She still sat quietly in her favorite chair, sometimes imagining Liam's face, his soft voice, the intensity of unspoken emotions. She had survived, but the truth of human desire and emotional neglect was etched into her heart. And yet, she felt something else settle. Thrilling awareness that life could change in the blink of an eye. That what feels secure could unravel in a heartbeat. That evening, as the sky dimmed to amber, Emily found herself alone in the living room, her thoughts wandering dangerously close to that forbidden's edge. Memories of Liam's warmth, his attentiveness, and the intensity of the unspoken hung in the air, almost tangible. Her heart raced, and for a moment she questioned her own restraint. Could she remain untouched by the pull of what she had once felt so clearly? A soft creak upstairs made her freeze. Someone was home. The world seemed to hold its breath. The creak upstairs was just the wind, or so Emily told herself, but the tension it stirred refused to settle. She poured a cup of tea, letting the warmth flow through her fingers, grounding her. Memories of Liam and that near crossing still lingered, haunting the quiet corners of the house. It was a reminder of how easily desire and loneliness could bend boundaries, even when intentions were pure. The lesson had been painful but invaluable. Love required more than feeling, it demanded restraint. Clarity and courage. Days turned into weeks, and life settled into a fragile rhythm. Emily and David existed side by side, carrying the weight of years and unspoken truths. They ate, talked, and coexisted, but the intimacy that once defined marriage had dwindled to polite exchanges. Emily reflected often on the distance between them, realizing that connection wasn't about proximity or shared routines, it was about truly seeing one another. David provided security, a stable home, but the warmth she had glimpsed in Liam's presence reminded her that emotional starvation could fester silently. Like a wound left untend occasionally, Emily imagined what it might have been like if she had surrendered to temptation, letting the closeness with Liam cross into something forbidden. She shivered at the thought, grateful for her own restraint and the letter that confirmed Liam had understood the stakes as well. It wasn't just desire, it had been survival, a craving for recognition and warmth that neither David nor life had fully given. Their near betrayal remained a private ghost, an unspoken boundary that defined her strength and his awakening. Emily found solace in small routines, gardening in the morning, the quiet hum of music filling the kitchen, journaling late at night. Each activity became a meditation, a way to process lingering emotions without crossing the line that had once trembled before her. She learned to value restraint, to honor herself, and to acknowledge that longing was not a failing but a human condition. The echoes of Liam's words, thankful, remorseful, honest, reminded her that even in near mistakes, redemption could exist if boundaries were respected. Years later, she occasionally ran into Liam in the city. He was calm, composed, the young man she remembered but transformed. Conversations were brief, polite, but never again intimate. The warmth had been replaced by understanding, mutual acknowledgement of a chapter closed. Emily smiled politely, hiding the flicker of memory that danced behind her eyes, knowing both of them carried the invisible mark of that night. They had survived it, matured through it, and learned that some forms of love are about letting go, about walking away before damage is done. Even with the distance, Emily kept the lessons close. Loneliness, she realized, was a teacher both cruel and wise. It could tempt, distort, and push good people toward choices they would never have considered in clarity. Her heart had been tested, her morals stretched, but she had endured. There was a strength in surviving desire and acknowledging the pull of temptation without succumbing to it. And there was grace in witnessing another person's struggle, understanding the fine line between care and something forbidden. One quiet evening, she sat by the window, the city lights reflecting softly in the glass. The house was still, filled with echoes of the past, but alive with the present. Emily thought of David, of Liam, of the fragile connections that tethered them together and yet kept them apart. She breathed deeply, feeling a sense of clarity she hadn't known in years. Love was not merely passion nor simple desire, it was patience, self-awareness, and restraint. Those who loved deeply sometimes needed to step back to protect what mattered most, even if it left a hollow ache inside Dot as she set down her cup and looked toward the darkened rooms. Emily allowed herself a small, knowing smile. She had survived, grown, and learned that the heart, while fragile, was also resilient. In the quiet, she whispered softly to herself, "Love is about seeing, feeling, and sometimes letting go before the damage begins." The lessons of the past night with Liam would remain with her forever. A reminder of human vulnerability, the power of restraint, and the beauty of choosing the right path even when desire whispered otherwise.